Hey everybody, welcome to our video where we're going to talk about how to use FloorMade stair nose to build an entire staircase to perfectly match a pre-finished floor in a house. FloorMade is a great product. They take actual pre-finished floor and assemble it to be the flooring top, front, and bottom as a perfect match to the floor in the house. They've got two different sizes of moldings, so we're going to show you guys how to build a staircase that's either boxed in or open on one side. We're going to clean them up a little bit. If they're not clean, the glue might not stick. You might have some noises from underneath. We're also just going to inspect that there are no squeaks or anything of that nature. We want them to be clean, we want them to be dry, we want them to be structurally sound, and we want them to be flat. And then once we get them cleaned up, I'm going to vacuum them off and make sure they're ready to go. Now I've got my workspace set up. It's pretty simple. I just have some sawhorses and a good table to work on. I've taken some of the material and I've nailed it down to my scrap MDF sheet right here. We're actually going to use it to mock up the tread each time we cut. There are a lot of different tools that you can use with this job. I like using a track saw that is able to connect to a vacuum. It keeps my space clean. I'm able to cut exactly on the lines that I make. Another tool that I use, the stair jig, you can use a tape measure. You're probably going to have a little bit more of a seam on the sides. I like a stair jig because it gets me nice and tight on either side, compensates for the angle. But like I said, there are multiple paths to reach the same destination. So each tread is going to be 9 3/4 deep, but we're going to have to add an extra 3/4 of an inch for the riser that comes out. So we're going to want each of our treads to be roughly 10.5 inches. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our stair jig and we're going to measure for the tread. On either side, get it flush. And then we'll tighten up an angle on either side. We'll lift out one side straight up. Now that we've seen that step is 39.5 inches, I'm going to go through this box and sort everything that's 39.5 inches or more, and everything that's 39.5 inches or less I'll set aside. Just to get me a quick gauge here, I will set that at 39.5. We'll cut this box open and then we'll sort through. We've got a stack of the pieces that we can use full length for the stairs, and we've got a stack of the pieces that aren't quite long enough for the stairs. So you can set those aside. You can use these on the flooring project in closets or places like that, but we're not going to use them here on the steps. All right, so as we begin to prepare and construct our treads, so we've already figured out we're going to have the nosing piece, we're going to have a full piece of flooring, and then we're going to have a 2.5 inch piece of flooring behind that. That'll be our full tread. One really important consideration, you want to leave all of the tongues intact so that they fully engage with the nosing. That will help whenever you have people stepping on the floor, and it will keep that nosing in place and solid. The other thing is, because we'll be laying it in that direction, we will want to make sure and take our 2.5 inches out of the tongue side of this back piece. You save the groove side pieces as well, because we're going to end up using those on risers if you're constructing the riser out of flooring as well. We've set our workspace up so that we can fit all the pieces together. We can set them on these two scrap pieces that we've affixed down to the MDF, and we can make all of our cuts in just 2 runs. The first thing I'm going to do is dry fit the floor to the nosing. Now we have a mock-up of what the tread is actually going to look like. And now that it's sitting on our scrap piece, everything sits even with the nosing. So we can take our jig. Remember, be really careful not to knock any of the measurements off with your jig. If you've tapped anything or hit anything or accidentally set it down too hard on your table, it's always good to double check and go back, make sure your measurements are dead on. We'll hold it in place and we'll mark both sides. Now we're ready to cut. Because I'm using a track saw, I try to get this as close in as possible so it supports the piece. This type of situation is great to have a long full-size piece with, because we can use this full-size piece to make both the side return and the front as well. The first thing I want to do is I want to make my side cut. And in order to do that, I have to figure out how long that's going to be. Typically, the return sticks about 1.5 inches past onto the skirting. So I know that I'm going to have 1.5 inches here, plus the distance of the tread, plus however long that nosing sticks out. If I know that that nosing sticks out 3/4 of an inch, and then I know that this is 10 inches, I take 1.5 inches plus 10 inches plus that 3/4 of an inch, and I'm gonna cut this piece from back to front at 12.25 inches, which I've already done. And I 45 that to sit right in here. The next thing I'm gonna wanna do, notch out the back of this for the return that sticks past the skirting. I can do that by either measuring with my measuring tape, or I can sit it up against here and mark the notch. I can mark where my notch is going to be. I can double check that as well, just to see if I'm right at 1.5 inches. So now I'll take that down and I'll notch that out. Now that we've notched that out, I cut our piece across, and then I cut this back right where the overhang ends. So, got this piece, now I'm gonna fit it in. I'm gonna fit it so that it 45s along that corner, draw a line right inside here where the piece ends. Once I have my line on there, just gonna check and see how square it is to the riser. Looks like it's pretty square. So now I'm gonna use my stair jig to measure from that side over to this side. We will want to be flush against this wall. Then I'm gonna come out straight to my line. And once I have my length measurements across the tread, I'll be able to take that down to my workspace and complete the tread that goes to the wall. All right, now that we've 45'd the rest of our long piece of stair nosing, and we've measured and ripped the back piece on our tread, we're gonna assemble it all just like the other tread, flush with the inside of this 45 right here. Now I'm gonna take the measurement that I have on my stair jig, line it up with the end here, and then draw my cutoff. Now let's take the tread along with the return and see how it all fits together. With this staircase, we're gonna start at the bottom and we're gonna work our way to the top. So the very first thing that we're gonna cut is the riser that goes on the bottom. In this case, we're gonna use 3/4 MDF risers that will be painted white. So the first thing we're gonna do is take our stair jig and go in and measure out the sides of that first riser. Put both ends flush. Now that we've got the sides done, we're going to expand the jig into the wall, and then we're just going to tighten that. Remove it very carefully. We'll get a measurement here. The riser comes up about 6 3/4 inches. I've got my riser material here that I've already pre-cut to 6 3/4 inches, which we measured with our tape measure. And so now I'm going to take the stair jig and I'm going to place it on my riser such that the bottom lines up with the bottom of the riser. I'm going to hold that in place and mark either side. I'm also going to put a note on here which way is up. And then I'll know that that is on the front of my riser. Next, we'll make the cut. Now we've cut either side of our riser right along the line that we marked, and we're going to go fit it into the space. The first thing when you're using flooring as a riser, make sure that your back gap here is less than the thickness of your piece of flooring that's going to go on the riser. Next, once you get that first tread in, you're going to want to measure and make sure we've got 6 3/4 inches from here up to the top here. And we're going to measure the sides and length of that riser the same as we've measured the previous riser and the tread. Then what we can do to get the maximum yield out of the flooring is use the cutoff pieces from making the tread. So I can use these pieces and calculate along with the flooring how much more I need to rip to get the height of my riser material. In this case, we're using 6-inch flooring material, and our riser is going to be 6 3/4 inches. When I measure this piece, this comes out to 3.5. So the difference between 6 3/4 and 3.5 is going to be 3 1/4. So for aesthetics on this floor, because I've got 6-inch and I don't want to have a little 3/4 inch rip left over, I'm actually going to leave this piece full width, and I'm going to rip my 6-inch to make up the difference. I will want that to be the tongue side to fit into this groove. So now I've got my second piece ripped down for my riser that I'm going to combine with my rip from earlier, and I'm going to measure and make sure that these two together measure 6 3/4, which is the correct height for our riser. Now we're just going to take our stair jig, lay it on our riser, mark our lines like we've done before, and make those cuts. Let's see how it fits. All right, now that we've cut everything, we're going to glue it in and nail it. Typically, I do this in a riser tread combination. So I cut a riser, cut a tread, and then I'll glue that riser in and nail it, glue the tread in and nail it, work on the next two, and I go up the stairs. I like to use glue and nail. It's just the most secure way to hold it. But stairs obviously get a lot of traffic, so we want to make sure that's secure down. The first thing we're going to do with our riser is we're just going to spread a serpentine pattern of glue. And once we have that on there, we'll press it firm. Now that this is in there, we'll check and make sure that we're flush on the subfloor, flush against the substrate, and then we'll nail in on the sides, the middle. Generally, you want to nail where the stringer is. So we'll nail on the sides. Now that's secure in there, we're going to glue the tread in. With the tread, it's important to put plenty of glue under where the FloorMade nosing is going to be. That will get the most pressure from feet stepping on it, and we want to make sure it's extra secure. Get a glue that's designed specifically for flooring. It's going to be able to stretch and flex underfoot without getting brittle and breaking over time. Some glues that you use will dry, get real hard and brittle, and you could have those treads or those risers come out. Next, I'm going to want to nail along the FloorMade nosing. I'm also going to want to make sure all of these seams are pulled tight, and then I can put a couple nails on the back side as well. In the event that you're using the flooring for the riser, you're still going to put glue down on the back of it, you're going to put it up, and then you're going to tack it in with nails to hold it as that glue sets up. So we're going to put glue on the step, and then we just spread it across with a trowel. That's going to be a lot more secure way of holding the tread in place. Because this end of the return is a groove going into the groove of the stair nosing, I want to both hold that secure and hold it level to the return piece. So I made a little piece of spline, which will go in here. It will also fit into the groove on the return piece as well. So now that I've got the spline positioned, I'm just going to set this tread down in the glue. I'll make sure and press it firmly so that it has full contact all across the tread. Press it in so that I'm flush with the riser. And then we will place this return right here. Work it into the spline. And now I'm going to nail across the front here. I'm going to get this return piece level and make sure I'm level on this outer edge. Nail across here. So the thing that I want to do is make sure these are level. I'm going to take my nailer and I'm going to put one nail through this way and one nail through this way so that that corner is held together and these two remain level. You have to be really careful with it. Don't put your hand on this side trying to hold it in the event that the nail deflects up. You also have to make sure you go straight in so the nail doesn't pop out the top or bottom of the tread that you've cut. And then when I've got it level, shoot the nail in. And now that that's held level, you can shoot the nail in from this side. And that should hold. Generally, when I'm doing these corners, even the tread on a thin material like this, but especially these corners, I want to use an 18 gauge brad nailer or even a 23 gauge pin nailer because you don't want to blow out a chunk on that corner. You also don't want a nail that's too big and comes out the top or the bottom. All we have left to do is the touch up, fill our nail holes, fill any gaps that we have, and move on to the next tread. Thanks for watching the video. Hopefully you guys have learned some tips and tricks on how to put it in. Send us any comments or questions you have about this, and we hope that this product helps you do work that you're proud of.